Hello, I'm Mr. Shovelware, and I hate bad games like these that come from bad game companies who don't know what games are, but they're just trying to make profit off the 100 million people who bought the Nintendo Wii. They know 100 million people bought this thing, so they're just trying to make money off them, hoping someone will buy these games. Imagine how many kids cried because of these games on Christmas.
I'm a small man in this small world of just bad games falling on top of me every day. Look how small I am compared to this world. But I'm Mr. Shovelware. Again, I'm here. We're gonna review another game that's just gonna make me miserable just every day. That's just all I do. I spend a lot of time looking at games that are outright bad. Games that have no merit, like those little crappy Wii games that had the budget of a moldy ham and cheese sandwich. Sometimes, and I think whether you're a game reviewer or you're someone who just likes to play games, you run across a game that everyone loves. Like, everyone praises this game. People will literally take a bullet and die for this game. So you're like, oh, okay. Well, I haven't heard of this yet. Let me try it out. It's probably good. You get the game, you're all excited to play it, you pop in the disc or cartridge or digital selection in, you play it, and it just blows. It just completely blows. And you sit through it, you're like, okay, this game might get a little bit better. It might just get a little bit better. So you sit through a few more hours of it, believing in the sheer chance that it might get better. The more time you put into it, and the more you play it, the more that it pisses you off, and you just don't understand the hype behind it. I think we've all had this experience at least once in our gaming careers, and for me, this experience was Shenmue on the Sega Dreamcast. I know, it's a classic and has a lot of hype, love, and merit behind it, but I didn't get it. I just didn't get it, okay? And honestly, this game feels like one of the bad games that I would usually review on this show. So call me uncultured, call me a poohead, call me worse than that, that's fine. But today we are going to review a supposed good game for a change. Shenmue for the Sega Dreamcast. Let's dig into this and see how bad it really is.
Back when Sega actually made consoles and, well, games, their classic Virtua Fighter series was very prominent in the arcades. As they ported these games to the Sega Saturn, creator Ryo Hazuki began to crave the idea of making a story-driven game. He took one of the characters from the series and wrote a pretty ambitious story revolving the character traveling to China to avenge his father's death. This project began development on the Sega Saturn, but ended up moving development onto Sega's new console, the big motherfucking Dreamcast. Shenmue, for its time, was one of the biggest projects in the gaming industry to come to fruition. They dropped the Virtua Fighter connection to make it its own project, so it could be more of a killer app Dreamcast experience. Not only the story and cinematic experience of the game sound quite ambitious, and this was at a time when games were still relatively basic, this game, for its time, had the highest development cost of any game, clocking in at anywhere from $47 to $70 million.
But don't get me wrong, that is a lot of money. That's nothing to scoff at. But it's a bit exaggerated from what we know now. The cost of the game were supposed to be for not only Shenmue 1, but Shenmue 2 as well, and it also covered the Sega Saturn version of the game, which, if you look at the demo, it's a pretty complete game. So while the budget is true, it's pretty exaggerated to say that it was just for Shenmue 1. Apparently, part of the budget went into developing some sequels as well, which they wanted to do up to 7. They must have had a lot of faith in this game if they were going to make 7 sequels just based off of one game that didn't even come out yet.
While I think this game is super flawed, I can't say it wasn't ambitious in any shape or form, because that'd be a straight up lie. It had a ton of work put into the development, from studying weather patterns to implement in the game and having the NPCs respond to the weather as such, with umbrellas during rain for instance, putting more interior designs in a game than anything else at the time, to over 300 unique characters. It was truly something different, and I'm not here to discredit the hard work and sheer ambition that went into this project, but someone's got to tell the truth here, and as it's been for the past 6 years, it's gonna be me. The game begins, and we see the protagonist, Ryu, finding that something strange is happening in his house on a cold December morning. After finding Ini-san and Fuku-san on the ground outside, he swiftly goes inside the dojo to see a fight between his father, Iwao, and the story's villain, Lan-di. Ryu fails to kill him, and Lan-di requests the mirror or else he'll kill Ryu. His father, out of fear, tells him the location of the mirror and tragically proceeds to get killed, right in front of his son's eyes, no less. Ryu's main purpose from here on out is to avenge his father's death and track down Lan-di.
While I am at odds with this game and have a lot of issues, if I have to give it credit for anything, it's a pretty complete and coherent story. So my issue with this game isn't the story, it's about everything else.
Getting into the gameplay, we'll notice every day has a location, date, and time. This game does focus on a night and day cycle, which we'll talk about in a little bit. Shenmue is a game like any other, in the sense that it's almost a real-life simulator. Exploring your house right away, you find that you can interact with nearly everything. Feel like opening a drawer? Sure, why not? Does it have any purpose to the game? No, not really. Want to pick something up and look at it? Sure, go for it. Does it do anything of substance? Most of the time, not really. You can interact with a lot in this game, you'll find, by exploring this house and other environments. But it's kind of useless. Most of the stuff you interact with does almost nothing, or at least very little, which for the time, interacting with stuff was pretty novel, believe it or not. In 2021 though, it's boring, it doesn't accomplish anything, and it isn't interesting. The interactivity is something to admire for its time. There's even a phone booth you can go into. It doesn't come into use that much, but it's a somewhat nice touch. You can actually call some in-game numbers, and it's kind of cool. Walking out of the dojo to begin your quest and controlling Ryu, you realize that this mother-frickin' game, it uses tank controls for moving him. This is miserable. Controlling Ryu is so awkward and clunky, I hate it. Tank controls were fairly normal in the previous generation of consoles, to be fair, but it still sucks. Not to mention, this was supposed to be a fresh, new game in a new generation, so when there were games that innovative 3D movement, such as Mario 64 and Ocarina of Time, this game chooses the antiquated method of walking from games such as Resident Evil and Tomb Raider. Considering this game isn't a platformer, it's not the end of the world, but it still leads to what I feel is a pretty miserable experience controlling the character. Often you'll just walk straight into things. Damn!
And the thing about this game is you're just walking a lot. Like, most of the gameplay is walking. Like, you want to play Shenmue, just and you just bump into stuff a lot. So you're just like,
So finding Ryu's father won't be easy. You don't know where to go. You're a lost puppy running through a thunderstorm. To figure out how to track down your father, you need to talk to the NPCs and try to get some clues out of them. This is a very big part of the gameplay. You just kind of talk to people. It's almost like a guessing game. Which NPC helps me? Where am I supposed to go? And here is when you realize how bad this game's voice acting is.
Okay, well, there is one at the tobacco shop. You know, Hirata-san's shop. I sometimes use it to phone somewhere when I don't want Yoshie to know.
Oh, it's you, Ryo. Are you off somewhere?
In that case, why don't you try to go by boat?
Come on, Yo. It's right in front of you.
This game had a budget of what? $70 million? This is not the type of voice acting I would expect in a project of this magnitude. I've seen better voice acting in like school video projects, like no joke. It's not just bad voice acting, it's almost intentionally bad. Like it was supposed to be like a joke. I wondered for a second, like, is this satire? Well, there is one benefit to reviewing a supposed good game for a change. People actually cared, people do interviews. And this time around, we do have an answer.
Basically, Ryo Hazuki insisted that all the dialogue recorded for this game had to be recorded in Japan. The reason we did it in Japan, by the way, was because Mr. Suzuki wanted access to it while it was being done. He probably thought that if he could go and quality control it himself, it would be better, or I don't know. Maybe he just wanted to leave his desk and go see how things were going. It was done around his schedule. It wasn't done because it was the best thing to have done. It wasn't done because we didn't have the money to do it in New York. It was simply done because that was his decision. Nobody that was doing it thought that it was a good decision, and clearly it wasn't. Add that to my regrets that we could have done a great job. It's like if we had gone to New York or LA and did it, they'd all have been great actors. We could have had a great script. So yeah, it was a conscious choice. So for people jumping to the conclusion this was, oh, we're under time constraints, or oh, the game's budget, nope. For once, I win, I write. This game was purposely designed poorly, and it shows. It really, really shows. These interviews continue to go on and basically say the voice acting sucks ass because there were hundreds of unique characters, but if you limit your talent pool to English voice actors in Japan, you're not going to dig up gold. You're digging up the scraps, the moldy cheese of the voice acting game industry. They did get a more professional voice actor for Ryu and a few others to ensure that the main character was listenable, which is good, but 95% of the characters in this game just sound awkward and strange. Some say it's unique, some say it's something special that only it can do. But look at a game like Sneakers. This gameplay was unique, right? Running around a 3D environment in 2D with branching paths? Yeah, so unique. Wait, why do I always end up talking about this game? This game follows an in-game timer, which was pretty new for its time and actually kind of innovative. While some people do praise this game for such, I feel as if this was ultimately a total disaster. There are multiple objectives throughout this game that thrive off of this in-game time, which doesn't sound bad on paper, but in my opinion, it really hurts the game. Say that you're waiting around for an NPC to give you an objective, and you need to meet them at 7. You go to the meeting place, but you're just running a bit behind schedule, and oh, you didn't make it. You're 5 minutes late, well, you're done. During this time period, you can interact with more NPCs that either tell you nothing or creep me the heck out.
Hey, mister! Wanna play with me?
Okay. Okay.
You can go to the park and practice your martial arts. But Ryu gets bored of this quickly, and if he doesn't, I do, because it feels like a drab, slow combat system. You can buy little capsules that are part of Sega's history, which is a nice touch, but the place that most people go is the arcade, which is one of the best parts of the game. Here in the arcade, you can play older Sega games, such as Space Harrier and Hang On, both Sega games released in the arcades in the 80s. This is a pretty nice touch, and fairly innovative for the time period it was released. As far as I can recall, this is one of the earliest instances of playing a game within a game, until Animal Crossing took inspiration from the function later, and let you play NES games inside of it. There's also some original games. One is QTE Tile, which is probably the simplest game ever made. Buttons appear on a screen and you press them. Yup, it's as stupidly simple as Simon says, but I guess its simplicity is a charm in its own way. There's also a game of darts, which I don't know if I really need to explain. It's darts. So this arcade is a neat little distraction, yes, but the games get boring really quick. Am I supposed to sit here and play these games for the next hour of my life? They're not bad games, but it wears on you really quickly. Graphically, this game looks very good for its time. When it was released, you gotta give it credit, there was nothing like this. It was a real bustling city with weather patterns and more detailed faces than the generation before it. Some textures look weird, but for its time, if there's anything I can praise for this game, it's the sound and graphics. It succeeds really well, and for those who do end up getting immersed, I'm sure it only adds to the charm. If you're out too long, you get sent back to your house. This isn't the biggest deal in the world, but it does break the pace, and if you're trying to accomplish something, it's annoying. Your mom gives you an allowance at your house, which of course is nice, but then you gotta walk all the way back to wherever you last were. What the heck? It's not a super long walk, but it is about 2 minutes to get to the main city of just sheer walking. There is at least a little traditional gameplay here, but I don't find it too satisfying. There are a handful of QuickTime events throughout the game. The first time this happened, I didn't even realize that this was a happening thing and thought it was the same as a cutscene and got my ass kicked. I don't feel as if this is very rewarding gameplay. It's one of the earliest forms of cheap, easy gameplay going back to Dragon Lair from the 80s. I don't find it very fun, and it's really not immersive either, which isn't that supposed to be, like, the point of this whole game? Why can't these just be fights? I want to bash some heads in, take names, kick ass. Instead, I'm just pressing the B button. Wow!
I haven't trained in like 5-6 years now. My reflexes are just not as good nowadays. And we were doing the scene with the Karate Kid and the pickle, where they drop the pickle into the hand. This time around, the pickle would just slip through my hand and turn into green mush.
To the game's credit, there are some fighting sequences which are arguably the best part of the game. It's a surprisingly deep fighting system where the practice you do in the parks ends up mattering here. It does require you to learn the combat a bit, and button mashing won't win you every fight, so it's fairly intricate. There are also forklift races, but they're boring as hell. Look at this. It's just an empty course with little point to it. Also, is this supposed to be realistic? Do construction companies race forklifts in their downtime? So much for realism, right? Does this game want to be true to real life, or does it want to be a fictional game? People say that this is the charm of Shenmue. This is what makes it unique and what makes it special. The fact that you can pretend you're living a life, a place you can feel immersed in, and that the day-night system is actually praised for this exact reason. I went into this game knowing this, so maybe that hurt the experience for me, but I didn't feel immersed at all, and I tried to get in the groove. I really tried. But for one, the terrible voice acting completely takes me out of the experience, and then for 2, there's only so many mundane tasks I can do before it wears on my mind. And for 3, I play games to escape real life. Why do I want to play a game that mimics how boring and bland our day-to-day lives actually are? Take the crappiest games ever. Take something like Ninja Breadman. It's a terrible game, but it's some form of an escape and gives you something different than real life. I'm not saying the game is better, because it's as gross as the gum underneath my left shoe, but it's at least more interesting. Shenmue has to be the most boring game of all time, and it's intentionally boring. We'll say, oh, you need to give it time for it to be good. It's a game that rewards patience. Or, it pays off in Shenmue 2. So you're telling me I need to invest hours upon hours of my free time to get the benefit of a game. Well, I'm not having any fun, period. Games are supposed to be fun, rewarding. Maybe I'm uncultured, maybe I don't get it. I'm sure the Shenmue fanbase will say that and rip me apart, but I think it's fair to criticize a game that does not have any real payoff for most of it. 10 hours is a big amount of time to invest, even a singular hour is, and Shenmue does not have a hook in my opinion. If it comes in the next game, great, but I'm talking about this game. From the start to the end, it's just kind of bland and monotonous. I don't see why people praise this game to the extent they do, and I know that's unpopular, but I do not get the charm of it. When playing this game, I often just left the controller on my desk and did homework, or watched YouTube or anything. Hell, I just wanted to get to the next part of the game. You can be immersed in a game without it having to mimic real life. If you take something like Xenoblade Chronicles, you can shift the time of day at any point, which is personally one of my favorite functions of the entire game, mainly because it avoids crap like this and does not restrict how you play. It keeps the flow and the fun present. Something like the mission system in GTA. Night or day, you can show up, and the day or night fast forwards to whenever the mission is supposed to start in-game. I guess it comes down to a preference thing, but I genuinely think the way that Shenmue did it, it just makes for a bad video game. I can see and respect why people enjoy it. If you get engrossed with it, fine. But for me, it's just not good. A game doesn't have to be one for one with real life. Real life sucks. Imagine waiting in line for something in real life and playing mobile games on your phone. It's something to keep you occupied, but would you say that experience is fun? No, you're just trying to kill time.
I don't feel like Shenmue is a good game. It's hard to talk about this game in depth because I have no issues with the story at hand. It's more so just like the concept and I guess the execution of the gameplay. I mean, you're just walking around. You have a good story, but you just kind of walk around. The voice acting is bad. There are redeeming qualities to this game. It's really not like the worst thing to exist. But again, it comes down to a walking simulator that drags on, and it's really punishing if you mess something up. Like, there is no room for forgiveness with this game. And if you like it, I am glad for you, because I am not the messiah of video games. Just because I don't like it doesn't mean it's not a bad game. It's just something that I think is not strong, and I did not think it aged well, and it's a bit overrated. Okay, I think it's bad, but opinions are versatile. You may have a different one than me. I'll just judge you for it and block you from all my social medias and get a restraining order against you. So have fun with that, motherfucker.